a bit of a controversy boiling at the moment, and a controversy about what was going to be, was meant to be one of the cornerstones, one of the most amazing things about our current government. It was going to be the most transparent government ever. That meant that, I guess, we would know more about what our government was doing, why it was doing it, when it was doing, what it was costing, and and how it was doing things than ever before. It's a lofty goal to be open and transparent. It is a good goal. It's good for democracy. But it would seem with just a little over a year to run, this administration has failed pretty miserably in terms of transparency and openness. And large groups, lobbying groups, and even some of our timid paid-off media are raising questions about the use of what is called the Official Information Act. And the premise behind the Official Information Act, which has been around for a while now, is that all official information should, unless there is very good reason, be available publicly. That we should know what has been done in our name by those who run our bureaucracy and those who we elect to run those who run our bureaucracy. But it would seem that the Official Information Act is not working the way it should, and we have a government which is happy to use all sorts of twists, turns and tricks to delay or frustrate the public release of information, not just to journalists, but to all sorts of groups and researchers. So what's gone wrong with transparency, and is there a solution to this problem? To discuss this more, we are joined now by Thomas Beagle from the Council of Civil Liberties. In fact, he is its chairman. I'll just get him up. Thomas, welcome to the program.
Good morning.
Look, first, I just want to say in general terms, and ask you the question in general terms, has this government been the most transparent we've ever had?
Unfortunately, this government has followed all other governments and talking a big game about openness and transparency when it's not in power, and then when they get in power, we see that sort of fall away pretty quickly.
So, not the most open and transparent government we have ever had?
I wouldn't think so, no.
Okay, scale of 1 to 10, is it above 5?
I couldn't answer that. I think that, I'm going
to take that as a no, Thomas. That's a nice way to say no.
No, we get a lot of information out of the government, but do we get enough? Do we get what we need? I'm going to say we don't get that. Giving it a rating across the entirety of government, I can't really answer it.
All right.
But I would say is it's not good enough.
Yeah. It used to be, and I'm old enough as a journalist to have worked before the days of the Official Information Act, that you would find a source, you would get them to leak, there would be a scandal indeed, not just about the story you were writing off the information you've got, but the leak of the information itself. A new generation of journalists now almost plying their trade is writing an Official Information Act request, which of course they don't have to, because all requests for information, if you say so verbally, are Official Information Act requests when you're talking to government departments and the like. The Official Information Act was meant to make it easier for people to get official information. Has it served, by and large, in its lifetime, that purpose?
I think it has. I think we shouldn't, while we have problems with the Official Information Act, I think we've got to look at it as being a very important and actually very far-sighted piece of legislation. The problem is it was passed 40 years ago, and it definitely changed things. It changed things from a pro-secrecy to a pro-openness, and I think it's been a really, really important change in how we do government. But at the same time, government, they've always got a thing of, they want to cover up what they've done wrong, or even just cover up embarrassing things. And we've seen an increasing level of what I call gaming of the Official Information Act. So, yes, it has improved things. On the other hand, I think we need to make more changes to it yet.
Okay, give us some of the examples that have caused you and the council the greatest concern.
Well, I think the recent one, there's the general problem of asking for information. They wait out the 20 days to actually release it, even if they've got it sooner. They maybe on the 20th day they might delay and send it to another department, or they might ask for another extension, which is part of the law. Then the answer you get back is only partial. They've actually sort of ignored parts of it. So you've got to go back and say, look, you haven't answered. It's a whole process that can take months. And that's one of the general problems which everyone's experiencing.
Whereas there have been numerous times when I've seen all sorts of official agencies saying that the 20 days, for example, is not the minimum time, that's the maximum time, and really there is an onus on all people holding government information to provide it as quickly and efficiently as possible. But that's completely ignored or breached, it would seem to me, in real practice.
Absolutely. There are some parts of government which are brilliant. I've actually had some responses within days, which is as it should be. Others, like I said, they seem to be gaming it. And there's also the problem of actually looking for ministerial advice as well. I mean, obviously, our one, which we had recently, was in early October, when the government was looking at bringing in vaccine certificates. There was a new law being proposed and we wanted to see the advice on it. We wanted to see whether the government had the research and the backing to actually justify these. Because, of course, vaccine certificates controlling where you can go, that's pretty important to civil liberties. And if you want to bring in a law about that, I think you've got to have a pretty solid base of evidence to be able to say, look, this is actually necessary in this case. So we asked that information and we got told that, we're going to proactively release it in 3 months' time. And that's a classic example of gaming the system, because they're saying we're going to proactively release it.
So it's like saying we have got that information, but we're going to spin it to our own ends, so you can just wait.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a case of like saying that, well, how we're talking about a law that's coming in now. It's urgent. It's an important topic for the country. We believe that everyone should see the advice you're building this, you're basing this law on. And they got put out, and then of course we complained that there's been ongoing problems with that since. But it's just this idea that part of the thing about the Official Information Act is not only transparency; it's also about public participation in government.
But government seems very keen to, if you like, to manage public participation to its own desired outcomes, because there's consultation. And then there's consultation, isn't there? They can be two quite different things. And often, for those in positions of authority, consultation is nothing more than a box-ticking exercise, which isn't true consultation at all.
That's absolutely true. There's been some really, as you say, box-ticking and consultation where they sort of like, yes, you just imagine them, okay, we've got all the consultation documents, let's put them in that, put them in a box over there. We've done that now. We're not actually going to bother reading them as such, or we're not going to change anything. There are other parts of government doing better, but yes, there is that. And the thing is that we need that information so we can, put our own, find out what's happening and talk about it and discuss it, and then actually put a meaningful consultation at least.
Is it just libertarian stirrers like you who are concerned about this, Thomas, or is this a general? Do you think there is a general and widespread concern about the way the Official Information Act is being manipulated?
I think there's a widespread desire and a recognition by everyone not in government that we actually need to do some reform of the Official Information Act. I think the principles which underlie it are great. I think how we're using it now needs to be modernised, improved. We need to add more scope to it. And I think that is actually generally held, and you'll see that I don't think you'll find a single journalist who doesn't agree with that for a start. But of course, they're actually very interested in getting information out of the government.
Who is meant to keep an eye on the Official Information Act? Who is meant to stop it being gamed and used by authorities?
Yeah. If you have a problem with the Official Information Act request, the person to go to is the Office of the Ombudsman. And they're the ones who basically handle Official Information Act complaints. And the problem with them is that they are a body which is deliberately set up to try and get compromise and suitable answers out of things, and they've got no enforcement powers.
So they're a kind of toothless tiger, really.
They do okay. They are toothless, and the things that, they can actually help resolve things, but that of course takes time as well. It runs out the clock. Especially the Ombudsman is a bit overwhelmed at the moment, and they've got so many complaints that their pace is very slow at responding. So of course that actually, when you're looking for information which is relevant for something happening now, if you wait your 20 days, you wait for the other 20 days of extension, you don't get what you want, you go back to the people, they fail again, you go to the Ombudsman. I mean, you got 6 months straight away. And
often information or a lack of information. Yeah, and often a lack of information or timeliness of information is vital, isn't it? 6 months isn't an acceptable lag time for data or information which might be important to a public debate.
Exactly. Absolutely. We need to be getting out sooner. Now, so the Ombudsman, like I said, they're overwhelmed, they're slow, and they're conciliatory. We think a lot of other regimes, a lot of other countries, they've actually had a separate, information person or official information
with some teeth,
or someone with some teeth as well. Because I don't think anyone wants to be in a situation where an official makes a mistake responding to something and gets fined or something.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when you're finding people who are actually actively working to subvert it, who are actively trying to hide information, who have been caught doing that, I think maybe there should be some penalties there.
All right. It sounds to me then that we are further down the track than just a few problems with a good piece of legislation, that actually what's needed is a pretty major relook and overhaul, the creation of an investigative body or a regulatory body that can force compliance in a timely manner from government departments and agencies of state. And also more than that, Thomas, a sort of change of culture within our bureaucracy that embraces the principles of the Official Information Act. Because it would seem to me, and has seemed to me as a journalist for some time, that bureaucrats often delight in frustrating journalists who are looking for information or public groups that are looking for information. They enjoy gaming the system, and they have a culture of recalcitrance when it comes to sharing data. That, I would say, permeates our public service.
I would agree there can be some cultural problems there. I agree that there's come a bit of an us and them and so on, whereas really they should be looking at how they can reproduce information and so on, because of course there's nothing wrong with it. We want to know what our government's doing. It's our right to know what our government's doing. In terms of changing the culture, I think you're right. We can't just change the structures and then sort of hope that magically works. It is a case of changing the culture, and that's part of what we want to see, a fairly substantial review of how it works. And like I said, I think the principles are excellent. I think we need a review of the actual processes involved.
Is any political grouping or political party with you on this? What is the attitude? I see Chris Hipkins has gone, oh yeah, there might be a problem there.
Well, the government was looking at doing a review, and then that slowly vanished into the future, which is a bit sad. In terms of other political parties, I think that there's a general rule that if you're not in government, you're pretty keen on having a review of the Official Information Act, and when you're in government, you're not so keen. So the parties are going to change their positions on that as they go in and out of power, I think.
Yeah. Look, there is another issue, and I don't know if you people have given it much point. In recent times, we have noticed, for example, the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet creating all sorts of advisory groups on things like online hate and what constitutes disinformation. And I've got to say here at the platform, we have tried pretty hard to find out how those groups are constituted, who they report to, who they're funded by, and who they are appointed by. And it would seem to me that they have been constructed, or their very structures are designed to mean they're accountable to no one, that I couldn't go and OIA these groups because they're so amorphous in the terms of the way they have been constructed. Do we not also have a problem when we are creating de facto agencies of states or propaganda arms who simply have no coverage under the OIA and can operate as they wish at the behest, for example, of the Prime Minister?
I don't think you're right in saying they're not covered by the OIA, as I understand it.
Oh, okay. So you're telling me that the new watchdog on hate speech and terrorism is covered by the OIA? Because I'm telling you, getting information or even finding out who runs and how those people are funded seems to me nigh impossible.
Well, no, my understanding is they should be covered, and as I said, I would agree with you that they need to be. Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point, isn't it? That we should be able to see what's happening and so on, and we should be able to know what our government's doing.
You're disappointed in this government's approach to transparency?
Yes, I'm also I'm disappointed in all government's approach to transparency.
But they kind of promised quite a lot, Thomas, didn't they?
They did, and that line about the most open and transparent government, I mean, yeah, that has been a millstone around their neck, I think. And they haven't done a good enough job, and I think they should do better. And I think one of the ways they could do better, and again, leave a bit of a legacy, is actually by doing a proper review of the Official Information Act.
Well, I think we might be holding our breath, but they've got a year. They've got a year to turn the round or turn this perception round if they want, haven't they?
Mm-hmm. They do, yeah. But I think that doing it properly, because the Official Information Act is in this position now, it's become so important to how we do government and how we do democracy in this country. It's got near sort of constitutional sort of weight in it. So I think that it does. If we do a review, one of the things we don't want to see is we don't want to see a small scope review. For example, in 2012, the Law Commission did a review of it, but they got captured by officials and they got much more concerned about, should we be charging for more information requests, and how do we protect these poor officials from all this work? So we want to avoid that sort of small scope, narrow type. We need a proper review done openly and with participation by people, by people across the country who want to be involved, to make sure we get a better OIA and not just a reformed one. Yeah.
Look, while I've got you here, Thomas, it's an issue we've done a few interviews on this week. The other issue being the issue of statistics and the legislation currently before Parliament on statistics. And boy, there has been widespread concern about that and the ability of a government to delegate the powers of the Department of Statistics. That would seem to me too to be a very, very worrying trend.
We're definitely quite concerned about that law. We've written and pushed about it quite extensively. I think that one of the worst things for me is that it extends the powers of the statistics people with very, very little oversight. And it's also this meshing of collecting data for official statistics and also just happening to collect other data which could be useful for research, whatever that means. I think I'm worried about collecting data for research. We think that should be removed from the bill. We're worried about the lack of oversight because, if you're going to do more, I think if you're going to have more powers, I think having proper oversight becomes even more important. And I think there's a lack of understanding in government about is that we're living in a society where data is becoming increasingly important, where data is about us is getting everywhere. And so we're going to worry about what does it mean. The more data that people have about us, I think there's actually an element of power involved in there. People knowing things about you, it's scary.
If individuals listening to this are concerned about these issues, and I think while it might not be sexy or anything, it is important. It is important in a functioning democracy. How can they help, get involved, have their say? How do you express concern as an individual about these issues?
It's hard at the moment, especially as we talked about. We've talked about participation and consultation not always making sense. I think you've partly got to we've seen benefits from actually writing to your MP. I know it sounds a bit old-fashioned and sort of naive, but I think it's actually, it does make sense. It does actually have some impact. You can join us, of course. You can join the New Zealand Council for Civil Liberties, or you could possibly even join the Privacy Foundation, who are both groups who are trying to sort of, protect us and protect our rights and protect our liberties in this area.
Thomas, I thank you very much indeed for taking the time to talk with us this morning, and good luck for you and the council in your endeavours to hold our governments to account, make them transparent, and indeed protect our civil liberties. Thanks for your time.
Yep. Cheers, Tim.
Thomas Beagle, the New Zealand Council for Civil Liberties Chairman. All these things come together. All these things come together. And in an age where data's being used to scare you, to manipulate you, to tell you that you're losing civil liberties, we've got to have access to that data, how it's being collected, and why. And what other data might be available that the government wants to keep from you. But isn't that interesting? And I would describe Thomas generally as a Liberal, someone who probably votes Labor before he votes National. But even he says very, very disappointing on the transparency front, Jacinda. That's a D, that's a fail, F, a fail on the transparency, which was meant to be, to my understanding, the cornerstone or one of the cornerstones of this administration. That is really, really disappointing.